You've seen almost exponentially more contact between these rivals than in the first race. Had or brand new sponsor Ceramic Hair been a part of this competition, they'd have been getting quite the work order. You've seen almost exponentially more contact between these rivals than in the first race. Had or brand new sponsor Ceramic Hair been a part of this competition, they'd have been getting quite the work order. You've seen almost exponentially more contact between these rivals than in the first race. Had or brand new sponsor Ceramic Hair been a part of this competition, they'd have been getting quite the work order.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the finale, the season finale of the German Tour here at the Hockenheimring Circuit. 17 corners, 4.57 kilometers of racetrack to go. Clockwise racing is the direction that these cars will be heading this evening, as they typically do in the Formula One circuit. I am your host this evening, Mr. Stephen Stewart, and I will be manning the helm as we take on this next 45 minutes. We call a mini endurance. As you know, our season finale typically comes with a little bit of drama and a little bit of excitement, and we'll have to mix up the grid a little bit. Unfortunately, we do have a few drivers missing, notably Mr. Jaden Harrison, one who has never, in my recollection, missed a race, but unfortunately is not in the island at the moment, so he will be missing this season finale, and that does take him out of contention for the top step podium. But we are riding along board with two-time podium sitter Mr. Kimani Eastman, as he rallies and will be using this as his opportunity to turn that from a two-time champion podium sitter to a three-time podium sitter. This evening we'll have a 45-minute mini endurance series. I actually do have Mr. Harrison here with me, and he will be running the race as race director for us this evening, so luckily I don't have that much on my plate. But that being said, the 45-minute sprint will be cut up into two segments. The first segment, we will open a pit window between the 15th minute and the 25th minute, in which only Jaden and I know when that safety car will be called. Once that safety car is called, then we will have the group bunch back up, and points will be allotted based on which position they are at the moment the safety car is being called. Once that safety car has been called, drivers have the opportunity to either stay out, or head back into the pits and make their way on some new sets of Pirelli P1 tires. So we watch and see who strategizes how. We do have one resident German this evening, Mr. Tim Stahl, currently sitting in P4, has not put in much laps other than today, like literally right before the beginning of this series. So we will have our eyes set on him. We know he's one of the faster drivers here at the JSRA, but unfortunately has missed the first 3 rounds, but said he couldn't miss the final round of this championship, as this is his home ground. This is Hockenheimring, and he comes on for the finale to stamp whatever he can do in this Caribbean Touring Car Championship season finale. We do have Mr. Dominic Charles and Rohir Robinson, the two who are at the top of the championship standings. We'll be watching to see what they can do, as they have been fighting it out with Mr. Harrison for that final step or top step of the podium. Let me say, I believe the point separation is only 7 points between Dominic and Rohir Robinson, so that is going to be a battle to watch. Rohir in the last 2 races has been a little bit upset with his performance and has had Dominic in his sights to try and see if he can fend off the charging Trinidadian driver. So we'll watch to see how that battle will ensue this evening. They don't have the buffer of Jaden Harrison either, so that battle we will definitely be enjoying. Hopefully Rohir can put up a fight, because we saw last week Dominic Charles putting a foot wrong and losing out in the first lap. It was contact and touching on the grass and then losing control, and then he said he had the most fun of his life fighting back from last place to make it all the way back to the podium by the second to last lap. So we've seen what he can do. We know Dominic Charles, he has his name as the resident alien in the Caribbean, especially over there in Trinidad and Tobago. So always a pleasure to have him back with us on the tarmac. But that being said, we have Oswin Wilson, who has missed the first 3 rounds as well, of Guyana, one of our favorite drivers as well. He is one of the silver class drivers that will be trying to see where he can kind of just mess up a person's evening a little bit. So he's only 2 tenths off of Mr. Charles and 4 tenths off of Mr. Rohey Robinson. Again, it will be reminded that we do have a brand new hybrid system that we are looking forward to, and with the new update coming in Generation 4, we do have a brand new car. I'll give you a little hint, there might be a drivetrain swap, so we may be looking at a little bit more exciting additions to the grid, and we're very excited to see what is to come in the next few weeks. We will be taking about a 2-week break, and then we're resuming in the next season. Tim Stahl there, again, we did say it earlier, he did not get much practice, but already putting that car on, well, provisional pole at the moment. This is the practice session. We do have 4 minutes remaining, so we ride along board with Mr. Dominic Charles now as we finish up the final 3 minutes, let's say 4 minutes of this session, and then head into a 15-minute qualifying, followed by a 45-minute sprint race, or 45-minute mini endurance sprint race, which will be separated into 2 halves. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back with the action. We'll continue riding along board and watching to see how these drivers will be navigating through this track. This is not going to be a drag race. Who took that one? What a finish! This is not going to be a drag race. Who took that one? What a finish! And ladies and gentlemen, the practice session is now over. We will have qualifying beginning in only a moment's time, as we do have 1 and 2 drivers finishing up their final laps and then should be heading back into the pits. This would be a good opportunity just to remind you of this evening's brand new format. This is a mini endurance format, so we'll have 45-minute sprints instead of just having 2 races, main race and a reverse grid. So this evening we will have a full 45-minute sprint race, in which between the 20th, the 15th and the 25th minute, a safety car will be called by our race director, who is typically on track, but unfortunately, as we said earlier, will not be able to make it for tonight's race. But Mr. Jaden Harrison will be directing this race from the pit box and will be calling a safety car when the timer runs out. That timer is only known among myself and him, so the drivers have no idea of when that pit window or pit will be called, but it's, as I said, between the 15th minute and the 25th minute, so that should throw in a little bit of drama here at the finale for the Caribbean Touring Car Hockenheimring circuit and visit. Once that safety car is called as well, whichever positions you are, you will be allotted points, and that would be your first race points allotments, and then the pack will be bunched back up everybody will get back into the formation, and we'll have one extra lap where drivers are allowed to go into the pits, change their tires, and head out for for the second staging of the race. That being said, qualifying is now on the way. The first person driving out is Mr. Dominic Charles, so we'll ride along board with him as he gets his out lap going and gets his qualifying session beginning. We are using the Grand Prix circuit, so this is 17 corners of action. We'll ride along board, especially with the live timing, which will give us a better idea of who is improving, who is making their time. But as you know, this is the outlap, so right now it's just about warming your tires and getting into a rhythm for the next 15-minute qualifying session to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited for what is on the way, because as it stands, we have Oswin Wilson, Dominic Charles, Rohir Robinson, and Tim Stahl, a four-man fight. The only person touching the my apologies. The only person touching the 51s was Mr. Oswin Wilson, who very much so, he has not raced in race 1, 2, or 3, and is now looking very promising in these stages of the race. I was looking at a comment there from one of the competitors asking if they can drive the safety car, but at this point it's a little bit too late, and we're looking forward to the battles to come. That being said, there is about 2 races based on the pace that we saw earlier, between 1st to 4th and then 5th all the way back to 10th, so we'll definitely watch and ride along board with them there to see how that will go. But that being said, Dominic is heading past to start his first flying lap now as his lap begins. My apologies. Hockenheimring, popular to many persons, especially the ones who are fans of Formula One. I'm not going to say it's one of my favorite tracks to race. It can be a little bit difficult from time to time, but nonetheless, it does have its very beautiful sections where we can enjoy. This is early morning. Practice did start very early, with the sky being very dark, and now the sky is coming to fruition for the qualifying session. This is live weather as well, so we will keep that on their way. As it stands now, Rohir Robinson is 2/10 off of Mr. Charles in front, and does not look like that's going to be a valid lap, maybe invalidated, but 24.7 is sector 1 time for Mr. Dominic Charles. 24.8 is Mr. Tim Stahl. So we ride along board with Dominic for now, and then head over to Tim, as it seems as if Rohir has maybe invalidated his lap already, and we'll just ride along board with him for the next lap. We know he is not the best early qualifier, but does make his way down more and more throughout the track. But as it stands, 51.5 is sector 2 for Mr. Charles, 51.7 is sector 2 for Rohir Robinson, 51.7 again for Tim Stahl. So we'll just continue to watch this as the pace keeps on coming. But as it stands, I believe Mr. Robinson's track or lap, my apologies, would be invalidated so far, but we'll check that when he comes around the final line. But nonetheless, the times are looking extremely close, and I, for one, I'm very excited. As we said earlier, 51.7 was the fastest lap of practice, and Mr. Dominic Charles, clearly taking the sandbags out, took them out and set the 51.5. Tim Stahl there, right there behind, only 3/10. Rohir, as we said, did invalidate his lap. Tim did get a purple sector 3, but green through sector 1 and 2. Dominic Charles are already going faster on that sector 1, so we'll continue to watch that as well. Rohir Robinson is right behind, so we're right along board with him, who is currently on a better lap than he was earlier, but still not as fast as he needs to be, as he's already about 3/10 off of P1, and we know he and Dominic are the 2 title contenders for P1, so we'll watch and hopefully get a little bit of action here between the two. Hopefully, Mr. Robinson can find his way up in the top 3, maybe even top 2. Kyle Barrett is in P3 as it stands. Did get the opportunity to meet him yesterday evening, to give me kind of a little bit of insight to himself as a racer, as he is not a rookie to sim racing, but he's basically just starting out, but not a rookie to racing. He's raced in, I'm not sure if it's competitive or what, I should have asked, but he did race some Formula 3s, he did some go-karting, and is not anybody new to the racing scene, so we watch and monitor him as it goes along. But there is Dominic Charles going extremely fast. I'll just ride along with him once he finishes up his lap and comes around the final bend to set his final lap, and that is a 50.913. so the sandbags are clearly out. Rohey Robinson there finally setting his lap as well with a 51.5, so the sandbags are out for the two ahead. Tim Stahl there is in P3 with a 51.8. Oswin Wilson is the only one so far that has not set an indicative time out of the top 4 at least, but as it stands he's not doing too badly. This does look like pace for about P4, P3. We'll watch and ride along. He's only finished sector 1 so far anyways, so we'll continue to watch that gap as it goes on. Dominic Charles now heads to the pits, and I'm guessing we'll be taking a moment's time, and nope, drove out almost immediately. So maybe putting in a little bit of gas and see if he can get an extra lap out there. I know Jaden Harrison in the chat should be scratching and itching to get back on track as he's watching this battle unfold, because I could only imagine what would be the outcome if we had all 5 of them on track this evening. The battles would have been so close, but there you see the banking in the sector. As Mr. Wilson now with a 51.6 in sector 2, so not terrible, but there he goes with the I will apologize, the commentator's curse as he comes around. I believe that might have invalidated his lap, and if not, it would have just messed up that final sector. So 51.8 is Mr. Wilson. It was not invalid, but nonetheless, those sausage curbs can definitely throw off, and you will lose an extra tenth here and there. So he has 7.5 minutes to try and see if he can make his way back downtown walking fast. You know, that is my typical statement of the evening that we have to ride along with. Mr. Tim Stahl now is improving in sector 1 and 2. He's about a tenth up overall, so he may be trying to see if he can at least take back that P2 away from Dominic Charles, who again just removed the sandbags and wanted to state or stamp his level of dominance as the qualifying session has begun. But nonetheless, Tim Stahl now backing out of it last minute, maybe saying this was not enough. Let me just make my way back as quickly as possible. Maybe lost a few tenths here on the last few sections of that lap. Cal Barrett now we watch. He does have the charging Trinidadian in his rear view there. I'm hoping that won't distract him too much, but it shouldn't be anything he's not used to. But there he will be going pushing as he goes along. He's not looking blisteringly fast, but still not a poor sector 1. He's only about 3 tenths off of sector 1 in off the leader at least. So we're watching for the sector 2. Sector 1 looks like he's having fun, and sector 2 is where he's having the issue. Luis Arenas of Colombia is almost a full second up on his time as well, so can he maybe dethrone the cars ahead, even if it's just Kyle Barrett? But nonetheless, we watch as that gap goes down. Where is Luis on track as he is coming around the final corner? So we'll see if he can dethrone the cars ahead, even if it's just Kyle. And Kimani there has improved. Luis does improve on his time, but not enough. Did lose out in that final sector, so unfortunate for him. Kimani Eastman, 2-time podium sitter, is definitely trying to see where he can make back that time. 52.192 is his time so far, and not necessarily looking like he's improving too much on this lap either, with being 3 tenths down in sector 2. So sector 1, my apologies. Rohey Robinson still the one to see if he can dethrone, but not looking too well. Maybe making a few setup changes. Now we know Mr. Robinson is one to throw in a little bit of, remove a little bit of the sandbags at the end of the qualifying session. So we look out and hopefully he can get a complete lap here this evening as he does come out and exit out of the pits now to begin his next out lap, and then try and maybe see if he can catch back up in the next few stages. Dominic Charles not improving as it stands, and he does look like he's about maybe a 10th up on his personal best, as a matter of fact, but still fluctuating, not looking like the cleanest lap so far. So we'll continue to watch that. Hopefully he can maybe find a little bit of extra pace and just secure, but as it stands, that podium spot, he is on provisional pole. That podium spot does pole spot does look like it has been cemented, but you know what they said, this is racing, so never say never. Nonetheless, Oswin there again using as much of the track as he can, maybe a little bit too much, as he uses those sausage curves and comes around. He rallies around the final corner, does not improve. 51.9 is his time. Tim Stahl still on the hunt there as he is in sector 2, or about to start sector 2, my apologies, as he's coming around the twisty section here. Use up that track, and it will be pushing now. Has started sector 2 by about right after that yellow line, hits the wall, turns in, tries to hug that corner as best, use the outside curb, use that green section, slam on the brakes now as he is in the final sector. He is improving on his time actually, by the looks of it, almost about 5/10. So this would definitely put him into P2 and put Mr. Robinson there under a little bit of pressure, but we'll hope that that's not the commentator's curse. But as it stands, Tim Stahl now on his home ground does look like he's trying to stamp that dominance and get back that P2 from Mr. Rohey Robinson, and there he goes, 2/10 quicker than Mr. Robinson on that lap. Rohey will now have his work cut out. 3 minutes do remain. Oswin Wilson as well will definitely be trying to see if he can get back up to the top 3. We know he has the pace. He has not been racing, unfortunately, because of work and everything in between. But nonetheless, we are happy to see him back in action. Rohey looking like he's backing out of that lap again. So maybe cooling down the tires, saving a little bit of tires for that last run. Because as I said earlier, he does prefer those last lap heroics, we would call it. So right now, maybe just looking to preserve as much tires, cool them down, keep them in that window that he needs them to be. I believe that's Kyle Barrett in the background we're seeing as they pull up right behind their one another. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 minutes remaining in this qualifying session. I promised myself that I would not be losing my voice this evening, and I'm already seeing where this is going to be a little bit of dramatic in the end portions of this series. So we'll continue to watch that as we do see Mr. Charles there in the foreground of Mr. Robinson as they head around, and we'll be looking, well, they are in sector 3 at the moment. We'll be looking to start their final lap of this qualifying session in only a moment's time. I'm sure Rohey is just trying to stick as close as possible. Did I see Tim come back out? Yes, he did. So the only driver who was fighting for that top podium start is Mr. Wilson, and he's already in the pits, so we'll continue to watch that. Dominic Charles now starts on his final flying lap, as well as Mr. Rohey Robinson, and Kyle Barrett there, right there behind with a 52.367. He does have the pace to at least dethrone P4, so we'll watch as that goes along. Dominic Charles there maybe putting a foot wrong and has made his way back to the pits, maybe even slightly comfortable, knowing that this is the final run. So this is do or die, the desperation zone as we've called it. Rohey Robinson is doing a 24.767, so that is not too far off the pace to at least take back that P2 from Tim Stahl. But Tim Stahl is coming around the final corner, and we'll join back with him momentarily as his final lap will begin, and we'll monitor that gap as well because he's already 2/10 up. So will he be able to be the one to dethrone the Trinidad driver, Mr. Dominic Charles. This evening we'll watch as that driver comes and pushes and pushes and pushes. But as it stands, the person who we're on board with is Mr. Rohir Robinson. He did set up green sector 1 and he's coming around to start his or set his sector 2. We'll watch and monitor now. He's not blisteringly fast. He's about 200 up on his personal best, and again 51.7 is not ideal. Tim Style was actually even a 10th faster, so there is Rohe just giving up on that lap. We'll ride right there with Kyle Barrett now, who is on better sector 2. He's about 400 up on his lap, so we'll continue to watch that as it goes along. But right now the man to watch is Mr. Tim Style, who is 2/10 up. Will need a little bit more. He needs at least 3.5 tenths to be able to contest for that podium position, so we'll ride along board with him soon. But here goes Kyle Barrett now, comes around the final corner and does improve all the way to P5, so congratulations to him. The next person up is Mr. Rodrigo from AC Karting, and a friend of ours who we're very excited to see. Unfortunately, they did miss last week's race, but nonetheless, we'll continue to watch and ride along. And nope, he goes into the pits, and so does Tim Style. I did see his delta go all the way back up, so unfortunate for him there. As it stands, ladies and gentlemen, your pole sitter for this evening, Mr. Dominic Charles in that yellow Renault. Tim Style on his home ground has missed the first 3 rounds and has made up his mind to make sure that he makes at least 1 round. Sits in P2. Rohir Robinson in P3 said he wants to win this championship, only leads by 7 points to Mr. Dominic Charles behind, or in front of him, my apologies in this case. Oswin Wilson has not done a lap up until this evening, so him and Tim Style are the 2 that we'll be watching, especially to see if they can throw a little bit of extra drama in tonight's race. Kyle Barrett now upgrading in that last lap to P5, right ahead of the Jamaican Kimani Eastman. 2 Jamaicans in the midst of a Guyanese and Colombian sandwich. Kimani Eastman in P6, Luis Arenas in P7 of Colombia, and Rodrigo of Canada and AC Karting in P8, Davil Park in P9, and Javon Parry to rally the troops in P10. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll just remind you quickly that this will be a 45-minute race. It will basically be a 2 sprint races. The pit window will open within the 15th minute to the 25th minute. So ladies and gentlemen, we have so much to watch for, and I'm so excited to see what is to come. And that being said, we will have a brief intermission, so grab your water, grab your popcorn, grab your food, grab your dinner. If anything, you can send a little bit to 30 Don Robin Avenue and I can get something to consume while we ride along board with these drivers. The gap from P1 all the way down to P4, even P5, you can say it, is about a second. So we'll definitely be excited to see what's to come. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a brief break. We'll just watch the trailers for the Caribbean Touring Car Championship, one of my favorite trailers as well for the Germany Tour. And ladies and gentlemen, we are back. As we said earlier, we'll just go briefly over the format for this evening's race. We are on board with today's pole sitter, Mr. Dominic Charles, after what an epic qualifying session. I mean, this guy is just smooth. He's a smooth criminal of Trinidad and Tobago, just clean and on point. But as we said earlier, it will be a 45-minute sprint race, or mini endurance, let's call it. So there will not be two separate races this evening. We will have a 45-minute race in which at between the 15th minute and the 25th minute, a safety car will be called. Once that safety car is called, then we will have the group bunch back up, and points will be allotted based on where you are at that 15th once the safety car has been called. Once that moment has been called, whatever position you are in is where the points will be allotted. Drivers will then bunch back up, and then once they're bunched back up, they will be able to on the next lap head into the pits, and we'll have one more lap going until the beginning of the next race. Sounds a little bit confusing, but nonetheless, we'll walk you through and keep you guided as the race goes on. But as it stands, Dominic Charles in P1 of Trinidad and Tobago, Tim Stahl in P2 of Germany, Rohey Robinson in P3 of Jamaica, Oswin Wilson of Guyana in P4, Kyle Barrett in the Mitsubishi Lancer, the OP car of the series, in P5, Kimani Eastman of Jamaica in P6, Luis Arenas in P7 of Colombia, Rodrigo is in P8, Davil Park in P9, Javon Parry in P10, and we have 6 lights on the way. The Trinidad driver is in the lead, and there he goes, and everybody is off. Sorry for the brief audio drop, but was that Tim Stahl making contact there with Mr. Dominic Charles to take that position away from the Trinidad driver at the beginning of this race. But there is Rohey Robinson as well, now seeing where he can fit into the mix. But the German and the Trinidad driver are now fighting it out. We have 45 minutes to go, and the race has begun. Dominic Charles now on the hunt for the German driver. He does have the pace, and we know of Mr. Charles being very patient and strategic, already making some dummy moves, because he does have that Jamaican driver of Mr. Rohey Robinson in the mix. But there he goes, sent the dummy, made the move stick, and now the two closing him out, keeping him on the grass. There is Mr. Charles, and holding and maintaining position. Tim had to literally just back out of that, and now Dominic Charles has taken back that position. Only a 10th is the gap between themselves. Rohey Robinson there now trying to see if he can find himself in the mix, and Oswin Wilson already trying to put the pressure there onto Rohey Robinson. Again, the two championship leaders are Dominic Charles, Jaden Harrison and Rohey Robinson, but Jaden not being here does put Rohey and Dominic into the grips for this battle. Kimani Eastman just watching there in the background, waiting where he can see if he can make a move stick or two. But there is Tim Stahl and Dominic Charles. They're heading side by side into a zone that you really don't want to go in side by side. Tim having to back out of that immediately and giving way to the Trinidad driver as they rally around the first lap on the final corner. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 43 minutes to go, and this race has already been drama filled. Rohey Robinson losing one position. Dominic Charles lost the position on the start of the race, and then was quickly retaken by himself from the German driver. Kimani Eastman as well, under threat by Kyle Barrett right behind him. He did make up a position because Kyle did start in P5 after taking away P5 in that qualifying session. There is Luis Arenas making the move stick on Davil Park as well. So we'll continue to watch and ride along here, ladies and gentlemen. What a start! And these two are the ones that we'll be watching for the moment's time. The intervals are very close all throughout the track. Who was that? Looking like he was trying to send a dive. Was Oswin Wilson, but that did not stick where he wanted it to. Kimani Eastman and Kyle Barrett seem like they're going to be having some fun this evening. So we'll watch this gap as well as the ones in front. We're seeing a little bit of rubber banding there maybe. But the two go side by side. Again, these are places you don't want to be. But clearly this is going to be the overtake zone for this evening. As Mr. Kyle Barrett makes a move on Kimani Eastman and takes away P4. P5 away. Rohe Robinson again is still just slipping in the slipstream, waiting on that moment to pounce, hoping that he won't be losing too much. But as it stands, Dominic, there goes Kyle Barrett careening into the tiles. Not sure if that was a contact from Mr. Eastman there, but nonetheless, that does relegate Mr. Barrett all the way down, unfortunately, but we missed it. Oswin Wilson made the move stick on Tim Stahl. The Guyanese driver has missed the first 3 rounds and already has made his way up into P2 and will be fighting. Rohe Robinson now looking on the rear of that Chevrolet, that purple Chevrolet, and seeing where he can maybe make that move stick and get back that position from the drivers ahead of him. Rohe did start in P3, now sitting comfortable in P4. I'm sure not very comfortable in his seat, as he knows who his real competitor for this evening is, and that is Mr. Dominic Charles, who is just slowly and surely just pulling more and more of a gap as he fights there with Tim Stahl. Will continue to ride along here because there they go, almost side by side, but Tim getting out the better exit of the two. Rohe Robinson, I'm sure, is just trying his best to just keep in that slipstream, maybe make that move stick as quickly as possible, because again, this is where the drama begins. Oswin Wilson, though, not letting Dominic Charles get away, and will be definitely trying to push as much as he can. Kimani Eastman has Mr. Luis Arenas of Colombia right there in his rearview mirror, so I'm sure we'll be watching out for that. But nonetheless, I did forget to mention to you, the audience, that the tire wear is set to 170%. So yes, even though there is a pit window and you can decide to stay out, it might not be the best advice. So right now you would, unless you want to do some tire saving, right now the best idea or best plan would be to pull a gap and then hopefully just try and do a little bit of tire saving. So is that what Mr. Charles is doing, as the gap has dwindled now down to 0.5 of a second? So we'll continue to watch that. Rohe Robinson again still losing a little bit of speed to the driver in front in Tim Stahl, so he needs to catch back up as quickly as possible. But nonetheless, this race, the start of this race has been absolutely epic. Rohe Robinson using a little bit too much of the track there as he is trying his best. Looks like he's forcing his way to try and catch back up to the top. Cars ahead of him. We'll watch along with Rodrigo as he looks like he's trying to make a move there on Daville Park. The Toyota Corolla versus the Mitsubishi Lancer. The two going side by side. Who comes out ahead is it? Ooh, and they're side by side throughout this whole sequence. What a beautiful sequence of driving here between these two. And there goes Mr. Rodrigo taking that position away from the Jamaican. And now Daville will have the rear end of that Toyota Corolla to watch and look at in the interim for the next few moments. Ladies and gentlemen, what a battle this has been. This would be a good time as well, as the battles have slightly plateaued. To mention, we have our first ever endurance race next week, Saturday. So almost a week until that event, and ladies and gentlemen, it is a completely full grid. We have drivers from Spain, Argentina, Panama. We have drivers from the Asian region, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago. We have Australia. We have Rodrigo's counterpart, Mr. John, over at AC Karting, who will be partaking as well. We have drivers from all throughout, 45 drivers total, 25 in the GT3 class, and was it 15 in the LMH class, if my or no, 18, my apologies, in the LMH class. So we have a lot to look forward to in the next few weeks and the racing will only get better. This is quality racing here, ladies and gentlemen, as we have Luis Arenas now closing the gap to Mr. Kimani Eastman ahead of him, and the two will be fighting it out for the moment's time to see who can maintain and get back that position. There goes Kyle Barrett now on Mr. Javon Parry, a late submission again into this evening's race, but nonetheless we'll continue to watch and ride along board with Mr. Robinson as he still has some skin in this game. He does currently lead the championship standings. Again, this race will be cut up into two races, so between the 15th minute mark the pit window will open by about 30 minutes into the session, and then we will whenever the race director, Mr. Jaden Harrison, typically out on track, makes that call for the safety car, wherever the drivers are on track, the points will be allotted and they will be making that strategy call whether they want to come into the pits or maybe stay out and gain track position. But with 170% in the tire degradation, maybe not the best decision here to stay within that on that set of tires, unless you've been doing some really good tire saving. Mr. Charles there pulling a 2-second gap to Oswin Wilson, and Oswin Wilson there pulling a 2-second gap to Mr. Tim Stahl. So as it stands, them two will be continuing and fighting. They will be comfortably in the moment's time, but Kimani Eastman, they're losing out now. Kyle Barrett comes around to take that position. I will definitely take the solace in knowing that I was not watching Mr. Eastman this evening, so he cannot say that or blame that one on me and the commentator's curse. But nonetheless, Rohair Robinson will be wanting to put the moves on his German counterpart here, a good friend of ours here at the JSRA, Mr. Tim Stahl. But still, your friends off track, not an enemies on track, especially if he wants any ways to catch back up to the championship, the race leader, my apologies, as he's just running away with this first main race of the evening. And we're seeing you guys in the chat. Ilio from the DAU Ukraine series, we're looking forward to your Independence Day race tomorrow. I guess it would be today for you, as you are a few hours ahead of us, but nonetheless, I wish I could have been a part of it, but unfortunately I will be doing commentary for our friends at AC Friends, who were so kind enough to lend us their absolutely brilliant mods, the LMH and GT3 class cars that we'll be using in our endurance race series. So as a community, we do like to help each other, and we do believe one hand helps the other. So I will be doing commentary for them tomorrow, but nonetheless, looking forward to the results. We do have a few Jamaicans who will be representing in the DAU Independence Day series. So it's 3 rounds. They'll have the oval, which I have never done, but I was kind of disappointed that I couldn't do. They'll have the MX5 and the Formula 4 cars at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. So it sounds like a loads of fun. Always fun to race with them. We did have the GT3 championship a few months ago that was absolutely intense. Ilya Rakitin there in the chat, I'm guessing has fallen asleep, or I'm hoping has fallen asleep by now, but he was one of our biggest competitors, and as I've said in many, especially in our iRacing series, he's been a thorn in our side, but nonetheless a very great friend of ours here at the JSRA. So we definitely try our best to support them when we can, but we will have a few of our drivers trying to represent Jamaica in that series to show our favor and our friendship as the racing goes on. And we are still watching and riding along board here with Mr. Rohair Robinson, as he is still trying his best to chase down the German Tim Stahl on his, let's say, the debut in the Generation 3 Caribbean Touring cars. Not his debut here at the CTCC or the JSRA, but definitely has unfortunately missed the first 2 rounds of this series. So this is his quote-unquote debut for this evening. Ilio, I don't know how you're still awake, brother, but try and get some sleep eventually, man. But nonetheless, of course, bro, it's always a pleasure to have you with us, and we're hoping that tomorrow's race is a success for you, especially as the 3 rounds. It sounds so exciting. I really wish I could have been a part of it, but nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, we will be posting their stream link in our story, so if you want to get a chance to support them and support our drivers, leave the Jamaican flags in the comments and in the chats as the race goes on. But there they go, and these two are still going at it. 4/10 is the gap between Rohe and Luis Arenas Tim Stahl, and in a minute and 35 seconds the pit window will be open, and again between the 15th minute and the 25th minute mark a safety car will be called. Only I and the race director knows when it is, so we'll this might just throw a little bit of drama, but from the pit window opens, I'm guessing that's why Mr. Robinson now is trying to put as much pressure onto the rear end of that purple Chevrolet Cruze. They can still see Oswin Wilson right there in the foreground, so I'm sure they'll be trying to push each other and maybe not even fight that much, but at least try and catch up. But nope. No, they are fighting as Tim goes defensive and they head down side by side. Will there be a switcheroo here? There was an attempt, but Rohe definitely has the pace in the slipstream of that purple Chevrolet Cruze, and there he goes, almost pushing Tim Stahl down the road. And will he make a late dive? No, he cannot. We know Rohe typically likes to do a little bit of heroics and maybe send a late dive, but he's been very patient with his moves in the past few weeks, so we'll continue to watch and ride along board. But there he goes. 4/10 gap is now building up between himself and Tim Stahl, even slightly. But while we're watching this, Kyle Barrett has made his way back through the pack and is now fighting his way to see if he can take Davil Park ahead of him in P7. He has only 0.2 of a second between, as Ilya says in the chats as well. If you are interested in racing, please send us a DM and we'll send you all the information. As there goes Kyle Barrett making the move stick on Davil Park to move back up to P7. Now he has 6 seconds of a gap to catch back up to Rodrigo ahead of him. But yes, as we were saying, if you are interested in racing in tomorrow's sequence of races, it's on iRacing. It sounds absolutely epic and we're looking forward to sending more drivers. But there goes Rohe Robinson now taking that position right there from Tim Stahl. Looked like maybe Tim ran out of the hybrid system and Rohe just used that moment to just make the move stick. I'll have to go back over to see what had happened, but that almost looked like he was handing the position to Mr. Robinson ahead of him. But nonetheless, the move has been stuck, and now 3 seconds is the gap between Rohe and Oswin Wilson. Will he be able to catch back up to the car ahead in the time of the safety car window opening? Well, has been open as a matter of fact, so we'll watch that and see when the race director will be calling it. And as it stands, this battle was fun to watch, especially Davil Park there DNFing from the race. So unfortunate for him there, not sure what could have happened, but we will ride along board to see what is to come. Dominic Charles now leading by 3.5 seconds to the car behind and is making his way through very comfortably and is just enjoying this as a Sunday afternoon race, or Sunday morning race, let's say, as it's about maybe 9 a.m. set on the servo. Definitely not the real life time of Germany, as it would be early morning now for them. It would be about that's about 3 o'clock roughly in the AM, so we'll continue to watch that. But there is Dominic Charles very comfortably ahead. Oswin Wilson in P2. Tim Stahl though has dropped off in pace completely, and his gap between the car ahead is now 2.6 seconds. So not sure if he's doing a little bit of fuel saving, maybe made a mistake on his fuel this evening. Not sure what could have been possible, but We'll listen to his engine actually to see if he's doing a little bit of coasting or what. But yeah, he's just fallen off completely. It's 3.5 seconds the gap between himself and Mr. Robinson. Robinson is now 1.5 second gap to Mr. Wilson in front. So he has found the pace to try and catch back up to the car ahead and maybe make that move stick in the immediate future. But wow, what a pace difference it's been. 1.3 seconds is the gap now between Rohe and Oswin Wilson. And a second is now the gap between Rohe and Oswin. So I'm not sure what's going on. Both Oswin and Tim Stahl have basically just kind of plateaued in their pace, where I'm excited to see what is to come on the lap coming in the next few moments. So Dominic there with a 151.9, Oswin Wilson with a 152.6, and then Rohe Robinson with a 151.735. But there is Mr. Robinson fighting his way through. 0.6 is the gap between himself and Oswin Wilson right there in his peripherals. He can see him, he can smell the race gas coming through that Hyundai Elantra, and he is pushing. He was almost about 0.7 quicker on that last lap, so we'll continue to watch and monitor that as the battle ensues. But what a pace finding was that from Mr. Robinson there. And he is fighting it out to see if he can make that move stick, and he's just sticking there in the rear end of that Ford Focus. And he is pushing, ladies and gentlemen. This is a battle that we're clearly going to be enjoying for this evening, as Oswin had moved up from P4 all the way up to P2 to just snatch it. We did say he was here to ruin somebody's evening, and so was Tim Stahl, but not sure what's going on with Tim here, as his pace has just fallen off completely. 6 seconds is the gap between himself and Mr. Robinson, so that is a little disappointing to see, but maybe we'll ride along board with him again to see what's happening. Maybe an issue with the car, but we'll continue to watch. Or maybe just tired. Again, this is his first time trying this car out. This car is very unique. It has a level of torque steer that will definitely put you out, and on top of that, it's just a completely different car to the last generation 2 cars. So we will definitely be seeing him in the next generation, especially for the new updates with the next staging of the CTCC cars. And ladies and gentlemen, I am hearing that the safety car was called, so that does finish the first half of this race and puts Mr. Dominic Charles in P1, Oswin Wilson in P2, Rohe Robinson in P3, Tim Stahl in P4, Luis Arenas in P5, Rodrigo Senna in P6, Cal Barrett in P7, Kimani Eastman in P8, and Javon Parry in P9. They will be crawling around until the pack has been caught back up, and then once the pack has been caught back up, they will have all allowance to head into the pits and make their moves. Who will stay out? This is where the strategy will come into play, and we'll definitely be looking forward to seeing what will come in the next few moments. So they will be able to head into the pits once the pack has been bunched back up. and that is just a reference to the race director just confirming that with me. So once Mr. Parry, who is right there coming around, makes it to the end of that the back of the pack, they will be increasing their speed back up to 80 kilometers, and they will be opening the pits so anybody can enter and change the tires, top up the fuel, anything that they decide to in that interim, and then we would go racing on the next lap to follow. But as we said, Dominic Charles there taking P1, Oswin Wilson in P2, Rohir Robinson in P3, Tim Stahl in P4, Luis Arenas in P5, Rodrigo in P6, Kimani Eastman in P7, Cal Barrett in P8, and then Javon Parry in P9. We'll ride along board with Mr. Dominic Charles to see who will be the one to head into the pits. Will it be everybody? And there goes the top four. The only person to stay out there is Tim Stahl. So he will be maintaining that pace for the next lap. So Tim should be at about 80 kilometers until the pack has been bunched back up. But we'll continue to watch and monitor as the drivers head into the pits, change their tires, and then they will be catching back up. Was this the right strategy move? We did see it in the last race, but hey, as it stands, Tim would have a buffer of Javon Parry right behind him. Let's see who comes out of the pits before. And Dominic is the first person to head out. Oswin Wilson is right beside, and is at Rohir Robinson right behind them. So they should get the full go ahead to catch back up to the pack. And then once the pack has been bunched back up, we should go racing on the lap to come. And there is Dominic Charles leading the pack from Oswin Wilson, from Rohir Robinson, from Luis Arenas, from Rodrigo, from Kimani Eastman, from Cal Barrett. The gap should be no more than a second. So we'll continue to watch that as the leaders are catching right back up to the pack. Tim Stahl P1, Javon Parry in P2, Dominic Charles in P3, Oswin Wilson in P4. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we will be going racing at the end of this lap. Once Mr. Stahl passes that start finish line, he will have full authority to go racing, and he will be leading from Javon Parry, from Dominic Charles, from Oswin Wilson. I'm sure he will be hoping that Javon will be somewhat of a buffer at the beginning of this race. So we'll continue to watch that as that purple Chevrolet Cruze is just trying there. Basically what I'm seeing is trying his best not even to scrub the tires too much and save as much as he can possibly save as we head into the next stage of this race, stage 2 to come. And the leader should be doing 80 kilometers per hour as he heads down into start sector 2 at the midpoint of this straightaway here, right by that yellow line. So the ending of sector 2 should begin by right about there as they pass the bridge. So this is the final few moments before we go racing, ladies and gentlemen. And we just got confirmation from the race director that we will go green light, green light, green light at the end of this race, at the end of this lap. Once Tim Stahl has passed that line, Dominic, as I'm seeing his fans cheering for him, and he does have the pace, we know that, and now he has the tires, but the only thing he will have is a charging Guyanese and Jamaican driver right there on the rear end of his Renault, and we are on the start finish straight, and the leader will be going as soon as he passes the start finish line. And there he goes, green light, green light, green light, says the race director. Oswin Wilson already seen if he can make a move stick on Mr. Rob Charles. There was the move, and there he goes up into P3. Dominic Charles now into P4, and Rohey Robinson there, right there on the side of him, trying to see if he can even force another position. Very late on the brakes, very light on the brakes, as well as the Guyanese driver does make the move stick on the Jamaican Javon Parry, but the two go into as three. And the Colombian of Luis Arenas there is right in the rear view mirror of Mr. Robinson. So now Rohey is looking in front, looking behind, and now trying to see if he can even make that move stick early on Javon Parry, who's basically blocking Dominic Charles there, as he would have been using him as a slipstream. And now the Colombian makes that move onto Dominic Charles there. Tim Stahl is the best winner so far, just making his way downtown, walking as fast as he can as they head down now into the ending of sector 1. But there is Oswin Wilson in P2, Rohey Robinson in P3, Luis Arenas in P4, Javon Parry in P5, and Dominic Charles there in P6. And as we see now, relegated down to P7, as Parry is just getting in his way. But is there an issue with his car, is the only thing I can assume. After the start of that, I am seeing the fans coming out that he's still their favorite racer, and yes, he's one of our favorite racers too, because we know Mr. Charles is somebody that will definitely put on a show here as he makes a move there right on to Javon Parry. A little bit of contact, but nothing too detrimental to throw off the race of the Jamaican driver. Kyle Barrett there as well, making the move stick, and that is Javon Parry in the grass, unfortunately. But now we'll continue to watch Luis Arenas now putting the pressure there on Rohey Robinson. But again, we're just very interested to know how or why that would have happened. But nonetheless, Rohey Robinson is now on the hunt. Oswin Wilson again on the fresher tires will be on the hunt as well. That gap from 1 second is now less than half of a second now. 3/10 heading down now, coming out of the first corner. So we'll watch this as that goes on. Second corner, my apologies. But he is now on the hunt. Rohey Robinson, I'm sure, will be hoping that Tim will at least pull him the favor of slowing down the Guyanese driver to give him a chance to catch back up. But why is the pace just falling off? Is it the hybrid running out? The hybrid does give you a few extra tenths here and there. It does have recharging capabilities, but it's not as fast. It does replicate the BTCC cars or the Brazilian touring cars out in Brazil, but nonetheless, we'll watch and monitor that. Dominic Charles now is on the hunt for Rodrigo ahead of him, so we'll watch on board with him. Kyle Barrett there right in the rear view, trying to see if he can be pulled along to see if he can make that position stick. But Oswin Wilson is now currently the one on the hunt. The gap between Rohey and Oswin has dwindled to about 1.2 seconds. We saw it go down to about a second momentarily ago, but the gap was originally 1.5. Now still it looks like it's just standing position. Dominic Charles there looking like he made that move stick. Rodrigo maybe ran off the track, not sure what had happened there, but nonetheless Kyle Barrett now as well off track. The two drivers that did not pit were Tim Stahl and Mr. Javon Parry, so they would have been the ones feeling the effects of the tires the most. 170 times is the degradation factor for this evening's race. Luis Arenas still holding suit to see if he can gain a position here on the Jamaican ahead. But ladies and gentlemen, what a start. We will continue to ride along here with the Guyanese. I'm watching the gap between Mr. Luis Arenas and Dominic Charles there, but there goes Oswin with a late dive on the outside to take that position, and that does put him in the let's say not the desperation zone, but the attacking zone for the car behind in Mr. Rohey Robinson, who I'm sure will be trying to dispatch of him as quickly as possible to see if he can make that position back. We have 13 minutes remaining, so Tim will be feeling the effects of those tires. We'll look at his time on the last lap, but we know he's somewhat of a tire whisperer in the past, so we'll watch him as we see in the background Mr. Dominic Charles are making a move on the Colombian, but Mr. Arenas not giving up up on his position too much too early, as the two make contact now side by side, and they are fighting it out tooth and nail. But Rohey Robinson now as well, seeing the charging Trinidadian, and he's saying, sir, please, you know you have the bad tires, let me through and give me a favor, give me a birthday gift, a late birthday gift from the German. But the German says no. Mr. Tim Stahl there holding his position and giving Mr. Azunusen as best of an opportunity to just pull away as quickly as he can. 1.4 seconds is the gap, and it continues to grow. Luis Arenas and Dominic Charles, they're still fighting it out though, as the two are going side by side, neck and neck. Luis Arenas not giving up that position as he takes a slight look on the inside to see if he can maybe get back that position, but the door shut right in his face by the Trinidad driver Dominic Charles now, as he heads down the start finish straight, and it does look like he's finally made that move stick. Tim Stahl there 2 seconds slower on that lap, doing a 154 versus the 152s, and he is at the moment just slowing down the driver of Mr. Rohey Robinson, who I'm sure will have the grip to go right there around the outside. But no, not enough is the Jamaican driver, but the two are still side by side and alongside if we go by the driving terms. So right now the two will be fighting it out. But guess what, Mr. Dominic Charles, who made or lost out a few in the first section of this second race, is now there right on the rear end, and this is a desperation zone clearly for Mr. Robinson, who is just trying to see where he can make that move stick. And there goes Dominic Charles pulling on Lewis Hamilton and looking like he's trying to go one of those through goes Hamilton at Silverstone, but does not get the move until they now go side by side heading into this swivel. And Rohey does seem like he has the optimum track position, but there goes with his true Dominic Charles and Rohey Robinson. This is not the best overtaking position, but we are leading up to a very promising overtaking section of the track where we saw it in sector in the first race. But as you come around this final corner, and you will see will there be a late dive by Dominic Charles? He's looking, but no, closed off is Rohey Robinson. Rohey is trying his best to see if he can get back that position from the German driver, Mr. Tim Stahl, ahead of him. But Tim is just putting on he is the Sebastian Vettel of this evening, as he is just defending his heart out, as 3/10 is the gap between himself and Rohey Robinson, and 3/10 is the gap between Rohey and Dominic Charles. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 10 minutes remaining plus one lap, and the drivers are going at it. The Guyanese driver of Oswin Wilson is just taking this as his opportunity to get away. There goes Rohey Robinson side by side with the German driver. The German driver does have the inside line, and there is Mr. Dominic Charles there, seeing if he can make that move stick again, but no. But there they go, side by side. This is your opportunity, Mr. Rohey Robinson. You're seeing a little bit of contact there as the two will now be heading down. Rohey does look like he got that position, but the track position is not necessarily where you want to be. Tim Stahl will be seeing if he can go a little bit later on the brakes and try and put out his elbows. Dominic Charles there, seeing if he can get a move, and there he goes right there on the inside of Mr. Rohey Robinson. So was just looking at P2, now sits in P4. What a drive there by Tim Stahl, but Dominic Charles now seeing if he can make that move now on the German driver of Tim Stahl. Tim has put on what a replica of driving here. We've missed him here at the CTCCs on track with us, but Dominic Charles now sitting in P3, and will be trying his best to see if he can make that position. Rohey Robinson at least wanted to beat Dominic Charles here this evening in the second race to see if he could hold on to that championship position. So we'll definitely look forward to the final championship standings in the end of this race. But Tim Stahl is just putting that car where he needs it to be, when he needs it to be. And there it goes. Tim Stahl now getting a drive-through for cutting. And that is his race undone. Took the risk and went with the chance of not pitting for tires or anything. and stayed out. That's not looking like it was the best strategy there. The Colombian of Luis Arenas now just poking his head to see if he can force a mistake there from the Jamaican ahead of him. But there is Dominic Charles, 7 minutes remaining. It is a 4.2 second gap, and as I speak that dwindles to about 3.8 seconds. But we'll watch and ride along to see if Mr. Wilson can hold on for his life here this evening at Hockenheimring in the season finale. We did see the numbers a little bit short, but nonetheless the action has not halted, and this fight has been absolutely brilliant here this evening at the Hockenheimring circuit in our season finale for the German Tour. We are seeing the fans coming out for Mr. Dominic Charles himself. And I mean, I see second place, but I'm just saying, we know Dominic is a driver that will definitely be pushing. But there is Luis Arenas pulling a gap on Rohey Robinson, and there the two make contact. And guess who is the worst of the two? Is Mr. Robinson, who is now sitting in the grass. Not sure what had happened there, because he just dropped off a thorn where the car literally just halted. Luis just made that move quick and fast. But there goes Luis now onto the final podium position. But guess what? We said his name earlier. Mr. Kimani Eastman is now on the hunt for Mr. Arenas for that final podium position. 9 tenths is the gap between himself and Luis Arenas. We've watched him in the past. In this German Tour, he's made his first 2 podium finishes. Will he cap off this season with a podium? That 1 second gap has dwindled to about 7 tenths of a second. Will Kimani Eastman have the pace to catch up to Mr. Arenas in front of him? 5.5 minutes remaining. That gap between Dominic and Oswin has dwindled slightly, and we know Dominic will be hunting down that Guyanese driver, as it's now a 3.7 second gap. But nonetheless, we've seen consistency with Mr. Oswin Wilson, but that gap is dwindling slowly. So we'll continue to watch and monitor that. We saw what he was capable of in the Hockenheimring race last week. Had a few unfortunate circumstances with some of the drivers, and made his way up all the way up to the podium in the first race, and almost, I think it was P4 of the second race, right there behind Mr. Robinson. So Mr. Robinson now is the biggest loser for this evening. Tim Stahl there disconnecting from the server, unfortunately. So we will have a debrief with him after the race to see what had happened. But Kimani Eastman again on the hunt. 5 tenths is the gap for that final podium position. Rohey Robinson as well. We'll watch that as he's right there on the rear end of Mr. Barrett in front of him. That gap between Dominic as well has dwindled by about a second now. 151.2 was Dominic, 152.1 was Oswin, so almost a second quicker on that lap. We'll continue to watch and monitor that, but you know, it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass. But there is Mr. Robinson there right on the rear end of that Mitsubishi Lancer. We'll continue to watch and monitor that gap, as he will be trying to see how much damage limitation can be caught back up on this evening's race. But there he goes right there on the outside of Mr. Barrett, and takes that P6 position away to try and see if he can even catch back up to Mr. Rodrigo. Ahead of him, 1.4 seconds is the gap. Damage limitation is the aim for this evening, but as it stands, we will be riding along now with Kimani Eastman, P4, hunting down that final podium position, and we'll be trying to see if he can be that final driver to join us after this post race in the commentator's booth to get a brief interview to kind of give us his take. But that being said, we've seen an amazing feat from the Colombian Mr. Arenas this evening, so I'm sure he will not be giving up that position easily. 3 minutes is the remaining time in this servo, plus 1 lap, and I promise you, this is what we've denoted in the past, the desperation zone. We have complained to Mr. Eastman that he's not aggressive enough when he needs to be, so we've seen him make that change this season. Will he be the one to just throw that late dive bomb, legal of course, and see if he can make that move stick, or is he just strategizing and seeing where he can maybe just force a mistake by the drivers ahead of him? Kyle Barrett there as well, right there in the rear end of Mr. Robinson, only 9/10 is the gap. Oswin Wilson clearly saw the pace of the driver ahead and said, or behind, sorry, and said, no sir, I'm going to pick up the pace as quickly as possible, as he sets a 151.6, 4/10 shy of Dominic Charles. So definitely holding pace as best as he can for the next 2 minutes. I'm sure we'll be sweating as he sees that gap dwindle slightly. You make a 1 or 2 mistake, but you don't want it to be consistent. But nonetheless, Rohey Robinson right there on the rear end of Rodrigo, trying to see if he can get up into P5 and make at least that position count for him in the final and closing stages of the Caribbean Touring Car Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, 6/10 between Kimani and Luis, and 2/10 is the gap between Rohey and Rodrigo. We have a battle to the end as Rohey is literally just pushing that Toyota Corolla through the corners, through the straights, seeing if he can maybe gain that extra position. And we are closing down now into the final segments of the race. As it stands now, it looks like we'll have about 2 more laps of racing as the race leader, Mr. Oswin Wilson, passes the start-finish line. And guess who he sees in his rearview mirror is Mr. Dominic Charles, who is consistently 151. So once the timer elapses, there will be 1 more lap after. So we have 2 laps remaining, and I am sure Oswin Wilson will be looking in his rear view mirror and just hoping and praying that he can keep it on track. This is the greatest thing to know, that he did pit for his tires, so he does have, or is on equal footing with the driver ahead or behind him, sorry. What that 3 or almost 4 second gap has dwindled now to 1.5 seconds. Will Dominic Charles be the one to take this the pole or top step at the end of this race? Again, one thing to catch, another thing to pass. 1.5 seconds is the gap between Dominic and Oswin Wilson, and that fight will continue. But there goes Mr. Robinson, 400s, 500s, makes that move on Rodrigo, but does have the outside line. Will he be able to make it stick? Maybe try and pull a switcheroo here, but Rodrigo getting the better exit of the 2 and does maintain that position. Rohey Robinson has his work cut out for him. Kimani Eastman as well needs to make that move stick now or never, because he's now 8/10 behind the Colombian of Luis Arenas, and I'm sure we'll be hoping that he can cap off this finale in the on the top, or not the top, but the final podium position. Kimani Eastman, 5/10 is the gap between himself and Luis. Dominic Charles now losing a little bit to Oswin. That 1.5 second gap has dropped down to 1.7. Rohey Robinson finally making that move stick, and that does put Rodrigo under threat. Well, I was about to say under threat by Kyle Barrett, but Kyle Barrett, they're now getting a drive-through for cutting. So that is his race unraveled, and he will have to serve that drive-through before the end of the race, or he will be getting a penalty from the servo. So unfortunate for him there. The closest battle now we'll watch is Mr. Kimani Eastman on the rear end of the Colombian, but nonetheless, I'll just take a quick look here. 1.2 seconds is the gap. 1 second is the gap between the Trinidad driver and the Guyanese driver. Who will take the victory? This is the final lap. And is this enough time for him to get the move done? But Oswin holding on for dear life, as 1 second is now the gap. It's dwindling around 1 second now, barely going underneath. Ladies and gentlemen, what a finale to this brilliant series that we've seen. That 4 second gap is now within a second, and the charging Trinidad and Tobago driver of Dominic Charles is now hunting down Mr. Oswin Wilson. But still, it looks like it was just one more lap. We've said it in the past, if he had one more lap, imagine what could have been. But nonetheless, the race is not over. Anything can happen, and Dominic Charles now is heating up and trying his best. 8 10, 7 10s, almost 6 as he heads down now. And this is the sector 2, this is sector 3, my apologies, and this looks like not enough time for Mr. Dominic Charles there, and the fight has been absolutely brilliant. They're still not giving up, but they are rallying around the final corner. And ladies and gentlemen, heading down now onto the start-finish stretch is Mr. Wilson. Oswin Wilson takes P1, followed by Dominic Charles in P2. 6 10 was the gap between themselves, and Luis Arenas and Kimani Eastman rally around the final lap, or final corner, my apologies. Luis Arenas in P3, Kimani Eastman in P4. Rohit Robinson had a little bit of damage limitation, comes back around in P5. Rodrigo in P6. Kyle Barrett will be in P7. He did finish 46 seconds in front of Javon, so he will not be relegated to any other position, but a 20-second penalty has been applied to his final time. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, what a battle that was. What a chase down that was by Mr. Charles, who I'm sure will be receiving many driver of the day votes in the chat. Definitely one from me, but Oswin Wilson there held on for dear life. He moved from P4 to P2 in the first race, and now taking P1. So what a battle that was. Epic driving from these drivers. Luis Arenas held on for about 3 to 4 laps against the Jamaican Kimani Eastman, who wanted that podium position, but not good enough. Dominic Charles now in P2, Luis Arenas in P3, and Kimani Eastman in P4, Rohit Robinson in P5, and the drivers will be rallying around. We should have the top 3, as there goes Mr. Eastman careening to the side, but we should have the top 3 lining up for the pictures at the right by the drag strip at the pit entry. And just getting confirmation from the race director, so that is on its way. Ladies and gentlemen, what a battle that was, what a finish that was, as we see Mr. Oswin Wilson there in coming out in P1, Dominic Charles in P2, and Luis Arenas in P3. Ladies and gentlemen, we do remind you, if this is something that you'd want to be a part of, we are always looking for new drivers to come on board with us. We do enjoy this racing. We believe everybody from the slowest to the fastest has their rights to be here. And we just enjoy clean, hard, and competitive racing. But that being said, that does bring tonight's action to a conclusion, and we will be starting our interviews here in a moment's time. So as we prepare the drivers, please sit back and get ready for what's